Good Sunday morning, Northeast Ohio, on this third day of March. It was a snowy one in Washington 5 years ago today, as cities were scheduled to make their pitches to host the 2016 Republican National Convention. The snow that day kept 3 of the 8 cities away, but it didn't stop Cleveland, and that persistence paid off. We landed the convention, which set the stage for the future, hosting events big and small. And sometimes it's the small where the power lies. In the cold of winter, with the winds whipping in off the lake, downtown can be a quiet, at times almost desolate place.
The hotels downtown, for instance, might be running 80% occupancy in the summer and might be at 40 or 50% in the winter. So when we have a big event that comes in January, February, March, they're starved for that business.
That's why the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission looks for tournaments that maybe don't generate the headlines, but help to prop up the bottom line. That's what this weekend's USA Fencing event at the Convention Center is all about.
We have over 1,800 athletes that'll be here this weekend. They're from 36 states and 27 different countries visiting Cleveland to fence and to spend money in our hotels and our restaurants and our attractions.
Money they initially figured would add up to an extra $1.4 million.
But the registration is way up, so we'll go back after the fact and recalculate, and my guess is it'll be even higher.
This kicks off a busy march of events that include 4 NCAA championships, from Division II wrestling and women's bowling to D3 track and field. And in keeping with this weekend's theme, the NCAA fencing championships in 3 weeks. And those events, big and small, just like the RNC, serve 2 purposes: spending today in the short term, but in the long term, sending those visitors home as ambassadors. Well, the beginning of March is a sign that spring is around the corner, and so too is the Great Lakes shipping season. And if you've ever thought about earning a living on one of these massive freighters, the time may be now. In the middle of winter, the waters of Lake Erie are harsh and unforgiving, too dangerous to navigate for most. But come spring, once the ice thaws and the air warms, there's money to be had on these waters. Always has been, always will be. The pay is good.
Have a job working on a boat right out of school, making $60,000 a year.
The experience is priceless.
The best part of the job is getting to see so many cool things and just meeting a lot of cool people.
And there are always job openings.
We have a great need for people, and a lot of people just don't know about this job.
Cooks, engineers, deckhands from cities all over the country now living in a city on the sea, hauling raw materials across the Great Lakes.
I meet the boat wherever it is. It could be the Sioux, it could be Duluth, Chicago, Cleveland, wherever.
From March to January each year, the Interlake Steamship Company, based here in Cleveland, hires more than 300 workers to hop aboard freighters like this and haul things like iron ore to places like the ArcelorMittal Company here in Cleveland to use in the production of steel.
We have an aging workforce with all the baby boomers retiring.
The maritime industry plagued with the same problems you see on land. The workforce is getting older, and young replacements are harder and harder to come by.
There's great opportunities out here for jobs to be had, starting off either going through a maritime academy and coming out as a licensed officer or engineer, and or coming out straight off out of high school.
There's definitely a great sacrifice for doing this job and having a family at home and everything you miss.
The crew spends weeks at a time at sea, away from family and friends.
But you're also, in the greater grand scheme of things, you're making a better life for them. You can do a lot more, and you do get longer times off.
Hard, rewarding, steady work, the story of a life at sea.
I have a lot of pride in this. It's a very prideful job. It's when it comes down to it, and for people who just want to get out there and start doing it, I mean, it's hard work, but it's really rewarding, and it's just all around just fun. Just have a good time doing it.
And if it's something you're interested in, we've posted all the details on our News 5 app. Well, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown wrapping up his Dignity of Work tour yesterday in South Carolina. The month-long journey kicked off in Cleveland and took Brown to Iowa and the early primary states of New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina as he decides whether or not to run for president. Today, Brown will be in Selma, Alabama, taking part in the Selma Bridge Crossing anniversary ceremonies, remembering that pivotal march from 54 years ago this week, led by Congressman John Lewis in support of voting rights. The history of the civil rights movement of the 1960s cannot be written without the name John Lewis, one of the original Freedom Riders. He marched and worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King and spoke at the famous 1963 March on Washington.
We march today for jobs and freedom.
Lewis led the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965 to demonstrate the need for voting rights. The group was confronted and attacked by Alabama state troopers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Lewis struck in the head by the nightstick of a trooper. The images helped fuel the passage that year of the Voting Rights Act. In 2017, Lewis told me of the importance of commemoration ceremonies like today's, and while he welcomes congressional colleagues, he said the true purpose is to reach the next generation.
I think so many young people know so little about the civil rights movement. Some people said we have a 10-word problem. We know about Rosa Parks. We know about Martin Luther King Jr. We know I have a dream. But people should understand that before we went on a march or participated in a sit-in or going on the freedom ride, we studied. We prepared ourselves. We studied the way of peace, the way of love. We studied the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence.
With Democracy 2019, I'm John Kosich. Enjoy your Sunday.